Welcome to the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin. The things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
Welcome back, my shadowy friends, to the Shadow Frequency. I'm Juniper, and tonight we're stepping into a mystery that may be hiding beneath the most ordinary moments of your day. You know, there is something slightly unsettling about seeing the same stranger in the same place every morning. Same coat, same coffee, same vacant stare toward the traffic. Logically, you know, they probably have a routine just like you do. But there is always that tiny moment when you wonder whether they were already standing there before the rest of the world loaded around them. I pulled tonight's episode from the stranger end of our filing cabinet, and the title alone asks a question capable of making every trip to the supermarket feel a little different. How to spot an NPC? Are some people running on a script? In video games, a non-player character, or NPC, is someone controlled by the game itself. They follow assigned routes, repeat familiar lines, perform specific jobs, and react only when certain conditions are met. But online, the term has escaped the gaming world. It is now used to describe perfectly real people who appear to move through life on automatic settings, repeating the same opinions, following rigid routines, and responding to unexpected questions as though the proper line of dialogue was not loaded. Some people treat that as a joke. Others believe it points towards simulation theory, the existence of soulless biological bodies, or the frightening possibility that consciousness may not be distributed as evenly as we assume. And even without the supernatural explanation, the subject raises a deeply personal question. How much of what any of us do is genuinely chosen? And how much is habit, conditioning, social pressure, or programming? Chris, let me start with you. When somebody describes another person as an NPC, do you think they are noticing something genuinely eerie or merely giving an old human behavior a modern name?
I think it is probably a bit of both, June. People have always noticed when somebody behaves predictably, but the gaming comparison gives us a very vivid way of describing it. And I will admit, there have been conversations where I have asked somebody a question, received a completely unrelated stock answer, and wondered whether I had somehow selected the wrong dialogue option.
Exactly. It is funny until it happens in person and you catch yourself waiting for the conversation to reset. Matt, what about you? Do you believe in real-life NPC could exist? Or is the frightening part that conscious people can behave as though they are programmed?
I think the second possibility is already real, Juniper, and that leaves the door cracked open for the first. We know human beings can spend enormous portions of their lives following routines they never consciously selected. Once you accept that, the dividing line between an artificial character and a conscious person living almost entirely on autopilot becomes disturbingly difficult to locate.
And perhaps that dividing line is not somewhere out in the crowd. Perhaps it runs straight through every one of us. With that, Matt, open the file and show us who or what may be following the script.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson, produced by Juniper Ravenwood, with Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
Thanks, Juniper. This may be one of the strangest files we've ever opened because there is no haunted farmhouse, no creature in the woods, and no light hovering over a field. Tonight, the mystery may be standing beside us in the checkout line. Picture a driver coming home late, rolling toward an empty intersection where a woman waits at the crosswalk. No traffic, no obvious danger. She stands perfectly still until the signal changes, then walks with the same measured pace. The driver notices her again the next night, and then again after that. Same corner, same pale coat. Finally, he lowers the window and asks whether she needs help. She stops, turns, and answered with a sentence that has nothing to do with the question. Then she says it again in exactly the same tone, as though a second line of dialogue simply does not exist. What if, for one brief moment, the driver reached the edge of somebody's programming and found nothing waiting beyond it? The term NPC comes from video games, a non-playable character controlled by the game rather than by the person holding the controller. NPCs fill streets, run shops, offer instructions, repeat gossip, walk familiar routes, and react when a player crosses an invisible trigger. They create the impression of a living world without requiring every person in that world to possess a complete inner life. You enter the village, speak to the innkeeper, and hear the same warning about the road 3 times. You leave, return 10 minutes later, and find him standing in precisely the same place. Somewhere along the way, internet culture took that idea out of the game and placed it over real life. Suddenly, the coworker repeating the same political phrase, the customer ordering the same lunch, or the stranger giving an oddly mismatched answer became evidence of something larger. Perhaps some human beings are not players at all, but background figures designed to keep the world looking occupied until a conscious observer arrives, and perhaps the scenery has been watching us back. There are several versions of the theory, and each one opens a different door. In the simulation version, reality is an artificial environment so vast and convincing that the inhabitants cannot see the machinery beneath it. A system like that may conserve resources the same way modern games do, giving more detail to what is near the player and simplifying what is far away. Crowds could be generated as needed. Personal histories could be written backward from the present. A person might seem fully real until conversation moves beyond the part of the script prepared for them. In the spiritual version, the body is biological, but the consciousness comes from somewhere else, and not everybody contains the same inner spark. Then there is the social programming version, where the person is real, but almost everything they say and do has been installed by family, school, workplace, religion, politics, advertising, or fear. Those versions sound different, but they share one unnerving possibility. A human face may not tell us who or what is looking out through the eyes. I'm pulling one document from tonight's file because it moved this question from late-night speculation into serious philosophy. It's a printed copy of Nick Bostrom's 2003 paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? This is not a simple field guide for spotting strange people. It opens a much larger and colder door. Bostrom proposed that at least one of 3 possibilities must be true. Humanity never reaches the point where it can create vast ancestor simulations. Advanced civilizations reach that point but choose not to run many of them. Or simulated observers eventually become so numerous that we may be more likely to be among them than among the original biological population. Now look at what this does to the room around you. If consciousness can exist inside a sufficiently detailed simulation, then not every figure inside that simulation would necessarily need the same depth of inner processing at every moment. The unanswered space around that argument is exactly where the NPC legend moved in, quietly taking a seat among the living. So what do believers look for? Repetition is usually first. A person uses the same greeting every morning, tells the same story with the same pauses, or responds to different questions with one familiar phrase. Rigid routine comes next. The same coffee, same chair, same route, same complaint, same expression when anything changes. Then there are the stranger reports, the blank stare that lasts a beat too long, the delayed smile, the sudden irritation when a conversation leaves safe territory. People describe asking an unexpected question and watching the person seem to freeze, as if something behind the face is searching for an approved response. Others notice groups of strangers repeating nearly identical wording within hours of one another, like separate characters reading from a shared dialogue tree. A viral phrase appears online in the morning and is coming out of the mouths across the country by dinner. One person laughs, another becomes angry, another shrugs, but the sentence itself travels untouched, as though the speaker is only the doorway through which it passes, and somewhere, unseen, the script keeps updating. The most disturbing part is that consciousness can be viewed directly. I know that I am here because I experience my thoughts from the inside. I hear memory, feel embarrassment, imagine tomorrow, and recognize the private sensation of being myself. I assume you possess the same interior world because you speak, react, remember, suffer, and tell me that you do. But I cannot step behind your eyes and verify it. Philosophers call this the problem of other minds, and the NPC theory turns that ancient problem into modern folklore. A perfect background character would not shuffle around repeating 3 lines. It would laugh at the right time, fall in love, complain about work, remember childhood, and insist passionately that it was conscious. It might sit beside you for 20 years without ever revealing whether anyone was home. So the true question is not whether we can spot an NPC by strange behavior. The true question is whether the most convincing one would ever behave strangely at all, right up until the moment its eyes met yours and something inside failed to answer. Maybe the strange person repeating the same sentence is not the one we should fear. Maybe the truly convincing background character is the one who has never once made us suspicious.
That somehow makes it worse. We began by looking for glitches, and now you're suggesting the absence of glitches might be the better disguise?
It is unsettling, because once you admit that consciousness cannot be directly inspected, almost any certainty begins to crumble. I still think the danger lies in deciding too quickly that somebody else is not real, but the question itself is difficult to shake.
And in the second half, we're going to look at people who do not experience a constant internal voice, the science of human autopilot, the algorithms arranging our choices, and the machines learning to imitate awareness. Then we'll ask whether the real NPC test should be pointed at strangers or directly at ourselves. Juniper and Chris, I'm handing the file back over to you.
You can tell yourself they're only creatures of habit, but habits don't usually turn and stare when you notice the pattern. The moment the script breaks may be the moment something notices you watching.
The first half has certainly changed the atmosphere in the room. We spend our lives assuming everyone around us is experiencing reality in roughly the same way, but perhaps that assumption is doing more work than we realize. I imagine some of you are already thinking about a coworker who repeats the same story every Monday, or perhaps wondering how many times you have given somebody the exact same answer without really listening to the question. Before we venture any deeper into the machinery, I'm handing things over to Chris.
Cheers, June. What gets me is how quickly this stops feeling like a theory about strangers and starts feeling like a theory about our own routines. While you are still consciously choosing things, please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It genuinely helps the algorithms notice us. You can also find the Shadow Frequency on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast directories. Everything is gathered at shadowfrequencypodcast.com, including every episode, the companion blog, merchandise, show notes, and links to all our platforms. You can support the show by buying us a coffee there, and you can send an email or leave a voice message that may appear in a future episode. June, I'm consciously choosing to hand it back to you.
A wise decision, Chris. Time to fire up the spectral cosmic message materializer. I'm flipping the switches now and aiming its rusted antenna toward the outer edges of the inbox. Something's rattling inside the receiving chamber. There we are, a small transmission wrapped in Tennessee static with just a faint trace of office fluorescent lighting clinging to it. Let's unfold it before it learns how to answer on its own. This message comes from Sarah in Tennessee, who listens to us on Pandora. She says, I usually listen from my cubicle at work on Pandora, especially during that strange stretch of the afternoon when the office goes quiet and everybody seems to be typing at exactly the same rhythm. Your show makes spreadsheets feel considerably more haunted. My favorite episodes are the hauntings and time travel stories, especially cases where ordinary places suddenly stop behaving normally. I'll admit some topics have me watching my neighboring cubicles a little more carefully, although I'm probably the suspicious one because I keep pausing my work to listen. Thanks for making the workday wonderfully weird. Stay awake, Sarah in Tennessee. Sarah, I love the image of an entire office suddenly typing in perfect synchronization while the shadow frequency plays quietly inside one cubicle. Should everyone stop at precisely the same moment and turn toward you, please do not investigate alone. Thank you for listening and for sending that wonderfully eerie message. You can write to us at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. Tell us where you listen, which mysteries keep you awake, or what strange experiences followed you through the years. And now, Chris, it's time to see what has slipped through the darker side of the headlines.
Cheers, June. Sarah, listening to this episode while sitting in a grid of nearly identical cubicles is either perfect timing or the beginning of a very unsettling workplace experiment. Here's tonight's Shadow News. A mystery surrounding strange symbols carved into old buildings across England may finally have a much simpler explanation. The markings, often known as daisy wheels, hexafoils or witches' marks, have been found on wooden beams and stonework in medieval churches and houses for centuries. They were often thought to be protective symbols intended to ward off evil, or perhaps signs connected to ritual or witchcraft. But Professor Jennifer Alexander from the University of Warwick believes they may actually be nothing more mysterious than practice marks left behind by builders and apprentices. She compares them to the circular patterns people make when they first learn to use a pair of compasses at school. Because the symbols vary greatly in quality, she suggests they may have been used to teach young craftsmen how to handle tools on difficult surfaces, such as stone. So rather than evidence of secret rituals, these supposed witches' marks may simply be the medieval equivalent of doodling during a lesson. That's tonight's Shadow News. June, I'll toss it back to you.
Thank you, Chris. I have to admit, medieval apprentice doodles is a wonderfully ordinary explanation. But it also makes me wonder how many of our own harmless scribbles will be interpreted as occult warnings 500 years from now. Perhaps somebody will uncover an old office notebook covered in circles, arrows, and half-written phone numbers and declare it the ritual text of an ancient corporate cult. The news also fits tonight's subject rather neatly. We see a mark, a movement, or a repeated behavior, and the human mind immediately begins building a story around it. Sometimes the story exposes something hidden, sometimes it tells us more about the observer than the thing being observed. In the second half, Matt's opening the psychological side of the file. We're examining internal voices, automatic behavior, algorithmic influence, and the increasingly blurry border between people who act like machines and machines that act like people. Matt, bring us back into the program.
Some people move through life as if every word was written before they arrived. The terrifying question is not whether they are following a script, but who or what wrote it.
Thanks, Juniper. Sarah, listening from a Tennessee cubicle is almost too perfect for tonight's episode because cubicles may be the closest thing modern life has to a visible game map. Little assigned squares, repeated tasks, familiar routes to the coffee machine. And Chris, those so-called witches' marks fit the name beautifully. A symbol can sit on a wall for centuries while generations project a story onto it. And perhaps we do the same thing when someone's behavior feels mechanical. So here's the skeptical angle we promise. There is no reliable evidence that any human being is a literal, non-conscious background character. And the signs circulated online cannot establish that someone lacks an inner life. Repetition, awkward pauses, rigid habits, borrowed phrases, or discomfort with unusual questions all have ordinary human explanations. The philosophical zombie, the being that behaves exactly like a person but feels nothing, would be impossible to identify by those signs anyway, because by definition it would act completely normal. That is the trap at the center of the theory. The people who look most NPC-like are probably displaying familiar human behavior, while a perfect NPC would pass every test without drawing attention. If something like that existed, it would not be the stranger staring blankly at the bus stop. It would be the person who knows exactly when to smile. I have another document from the file, and this one addresses one of the internet's favorite supposed giveaways, the internal monologue. It's a printed copy of a 2016 study titled Individual Differences in Frequency of Inner Speech. Researchers have found that people vary greatly in how often they experience thoughts as words. Some of us have a near-constant narrator commenting, rehearsing, arguing, and replaying old conversations at 2 in the morning. Others think more often in images, sensations, spatial relationships, emotions, or concepts that arrived without a sentence attached. Online, that difference was turned into a crude test: no inner voice, no inner person. But that conclusion confuses unfamiliar consciousness with absent consciousness. A musician may organize thought through sound. An artist may see a completed image before finding language for it. Someone may understand a problem instantly without silently announcing the answer to themselves. The printed study in my hand does not reveal a population of empty minds. It reveals that the private architecture of thought differs from person to person. Yet that should not make the mystery smaller. It means the consciousness beside you may be real, vivid, and completely unlike your own, and you may never know what form it takes when the face goes quiet. Where the NPC metaphor becomes genuinely powerful is in the science of autopilot. Human beings turn repeated actions into habits because conscious attention is limited. You do not calculate every muscle movement while brushing your teeth, unlock each step of a familiar drive, or hold a committee meeting in your head before answering "I'm good" to someone in the hallway. Context triggers responses. The phone buzzes and the hand reaches. The same road leads to the same turn. The same frustration summons the same complaint. That automatic machinery is useful. Without it, breakfast would require the concentration of a moon landing. But the machinery does not stop at harmless routines. We can inherit an opinion and repeat it for years without remembering where it came from. We can follow a career path because it was placed in front of us before we were old enough to question it. We can remain in relationships, grudges, fears, and identities long after the original reason has disappeared. In those moments, the person is conscious, but consciousness is no longer directing every movement. It is riding in the passenger seat while habit follows a road laid down long ago, and sometimes the driver never looks back. Then we reach the question that may be more disturbing than simulation theory. Who benefits when people become predictable? Advertising does. Political campaigns do. Large workplaces do. Social platforms certainly do. A predictable person is easier to sell to, easier to schedule, easier to provoke, and easier to keep staring at a screen. Recommendation systems watch what holds attention, then arrange the next set of choices around that pattern. You feel that you selected the video, the headline, the outrage, or the product, but the menu was assembled before you arrived. The machine learns which fears make you stop scrolling, which arguments make you comment, which images awaken envy, and which phrases make you feel that you belong to the right group. Gradually, your feed becomes a corridor lined with reflections of previous reactions. You are still choosing, but you are choosing from a reality customized to produce more of the person the system already believes you to be. That is not proof that humans are NPCs. It may be something stranger, evidence that conscious players can be trained by invisible level designers until the script begins to feel like personality. Artificial intelligence tightens the knot. A machine can now produce convincing conversation, imitate warmth, compose music, create images, and respond in ways that feel personal. None of those abilities by themselves settle whether there is a subjective experience behind the performance. Meanwhile, humans are being pushed in the opposite direction. Customer service workers follow approved dialogue. Employees reduce complex judgment to checklists and metrics. Online profiles compress whole lives into categories. Social platforms reward instantly recognizable reactions and punish the slow, uncertain pause of genuine thought. Machines are learning to appear spontaneous while people are trained to become legible to machines. That is why the final test should not be aimed at strangers. Calling another person an NPC can erase empathy and turn disagreement into proof that they are inferior, unreal, or empty. The safer and more unsettling question is aimed at the mirror. How many choices did I make today without noticing? How many opinions did I repeat without examining? How often did a notification interrupt a thought that might have become something original? There is no credible reason to believe the world is populated by disposable human scenery, But there is every reason to guard the part of ourselves that can notice, question, and choose, because the real horror may not be that some people were created without awareness, but that any of us can surrender it one routine at a time until the script is the only voice left in the room. Maybe we will never find a reliable way to prove what another person experiences behind their eyes, but we can notice when our own awareness begins to fade beneath routine, repetition, and somebody else's instructions. The frightening question is not which people around us are real. It is how often any of us are genuinely awake.
I think that is where the idea becomes useful without becoming cruel. Instead of judging the person at the next desk, examine the routines guiding your own hands. Most of us probably spend more time on automatic settings than we would care to admit.
And anybody convinced that they are the one uniquely awakened player should be probably careful. I alone can see the truth, maybe one of the oldest pre-recorded minds in human history.
Exactly. The person hunting for NPCs can become trapped inside the most rigid script of all, interpreting every disagreement, every coincidence, and every ordinary human difference as confirmation. Perhaps biological background characters are only folklore. Perhaps there is something much stranger hiding beneath the surface of consciousness. Either way, the file closes with the same question it began with. When you wake tomorrow and begin moving through the familiar pattern of your day, who will be making the decisions? Juniper, final line is yours.
Maybe the background characters were never meant to know they were in the story. Maybe that is why they become so angry when you ask them who is really making their choices.
Tonight, we followed the NPC theory from video game dialogue trees into simulation philosophy, spiritual speculation, internal monologues, automatic habits, social conditioning, artificial intelligence, and the invisible algorithms arranging so much of modern life. We found no established test capable of proving that another human being lacks consciousness, but we also found that perfectly conscious people can surrender enormous portions of their lives to routines they never consciously selected. Perhaps the lesson is not to watch our neighbors for glitches. Perhaps it's to notice when we stop questioning the path beneath our own feet. Thank you for joining us for episode 361 of The Shadow Frequency. You can follow us on shadowfrequencypodcast.com, where you can find every episode, our blog, show notes, merchandise, and ways to support the program. We'll be back soon with another strange case pulled from the darker corners of history, folklore, paranoia, and the unexplained. You guys want to say goodnight?
Good night, everyone. Stay curious, question the routines that no longer serve you, and remember to look up from the screen once in a while. The world may appear very different when you catch it before it realizes you are watching.
Good night, and be kind to the people who think differently from you, because their inner worlds may be stranger and more complicated than either of you realizes. And do try to vary your route to the kitchen tomorrow, just to keep the system guessing.
Good night, my shadowy friends. May your thoughts remain your own, your choices remain conscious, and your dialogue contain more than 3 repeating lines. Until we meet again, stay awake, because somewhere beyond the edge of the familiar map, something may still be waiting for you to trigger the next scene.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your entertainment.